Hi everyone, it's Alox, and today we're launching a brand new series about Cyberpunk 2077 called Facts and Lore. In this series, I'll show you some things you probably didn't notice, no matter how well you know Night City. CDPR didn't just make an open world, they created one of the most rich and complex worlds in gaming, so let's not waste any more time. The moon is an important aspect of Cyberpunk 2077, and in this game, it has some strange behaviors. First of all, the moon is always full. You will never see it in the crescent or gibbous form. The moon rotates on its x-axis, and depending on the hour, you will not see the same face of the moon. In reality, the moon rotates on its own axis, and you will not see much difference in the face. Besides, you can't really get a closer look, the moon stays the same size because it's not modeled, it's a skybox that can't be reached. Yeah, the 250,000 euro trips seems very expensive now. Weather in Cyberpunk is more than just a visual effect. When it rains, some NPCs pull out umbrellas, while others seek shelter, some with really stylish umbrellas. However, when I tested this feature in Dogtown, I didn't spot a single NPC using one, and I assure you, I tried to find one for a long time. It could be a bug, or perhaps Dogtown residents are simply more resistant to the elements.
Where are you walking?
CD Projekt Red loves sneaking in movie reference, and we're going to talk about many of them in this series. Here, on the map, in the Badlands near the melee weapons vendor, you can find a cave with a lot of bodies at the entrance. These are bodies from the Wraith groups, who are notorious for ambushing convoys. And inside this chest, there's a shard that tells you what happened. Here's the full message if you want to read it. Feel free to pause, but I give you a quick summary. It's a shard from Thomas Thor, a Militech engineer kidnapped by the Wraith. They forced him to disable missile security systems, but instead he secretly built an exoskeleton. Over time, he added armor and flamethrowers, and on day 36, he launched his escape, leaving some dead Wraith behind and finally regaining his freedom. If you haven't caught the reference yet, yes, it's clearly inspired by Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movie when he escapes from captivity in Afghanistan building the famous Mark I. I tried searching behind the cave-in, but I found nothing. Keanu Reeves plays Johnny Silverhand. Yeah, shocking, right? But CD Projekt Red took it a step further by incorporating John Wick nods into the game. At the beginning of the side gig Olive Branch, you can find a man named Sergei Karazinski. And if you ask him why he pissed off the Tiger Claws, here's what he says in response.
How'd you piss off the Tiger Claws?
It was just a friendly misunderstanding.
Sure.
This man, he look normal, beard, brown shoes, nothing, breathtaking. And they also have little dog, Gospody. What kind of hitman goes around with dog?
This misunderstanding involve you shooting him?
It was worse, much worse. I say too much already.
He is clearly describing the character of John Wick, and we could even say Keanu, given the reference to the breathtaking.
Breathtaking.
We can also note that just like John Wick mainly faces Russians in the first film, Sergei is also Russian. And it's in this language that he says the dog's name, Gospody. In Russian, Gospody means my lord and is used as an exclamation similar to oh my god in English. And when you know John Wick, the subtle reference becomes much clearer. But that's not all. With the Phantom Liberty expansion, we get a second reference, this time a bit less subtle. At IBM Petrochem Stadium, you can find a weapon vendor, and if you go to the right, you can find a weapons case labeled for Mr. Wick. Even Johnny reacts to the node.
Oh, fuck.
I couldn't see what was inside the case, but you can recognize the samurai logo. And speaking of samurai, did you know that Johnny Silverhand's band wasn't just a fictional group? Their music is performed by the real-life Swedish punk band named Refused. They have been performing since 1991, and for the game they recorded 6 tracks in total, like Never Fade Away or Chippin' In. There were actually plans to do a live performance with Keanu Reeves, but you know, COVID happened. Yeah, that sucks. They are currently on their farewell tour, so big thanks to them for these iconic tracks. Cyberpunk 2077 also pays tribute to the Back to the Future franchise. First, there is the perk Shipwreck Connoisseur, formerly known as Crazy Science before the update 2.0, which is clearly Doc Brown in the first movie when he explained his plan to Marty McFly. And lastly, the update 2.2 introduced an in-game event referencing the third movie. If you go to this place during the night, you found a street race taking place at the docks. One of the 2 cars ends up in the water and the driver dies. You can find the box in the truck of the car with this chart. Once again, you can pause to read everything, but I will summarize it all. Jen Fournette and Needles argue about his risky behavior. Jen expresses concern for his safety after a close call, but Needles brushes it off, focusing instead on winning money and buying blue glass. Jen reminds him of Marty, who died under similar circumstances, but Needles dismisses it, calling Marty weak. And as Jen has predicted, things don't end well for Needles. So Jen is a reference to Jennifer Parker, the girlfriend of Marty McFly, and Needles is a minor antagonist in the movie. In this movie, Marty declines a street race with 2 glass needles, thus avoiding the future accident Doc warned him about. In the game, Marty didn't have the same luck, and Needles ends up the same way as McFly. I noticed that the car's evasive maneuver is similar to the one in the movie. We can also find bluegrass in the car's trunk, so we can assume Needles was a bit drunk. The body in the front is indeed Needles, and she's a woman in this timeline. Solomon Reed is a key character in the Phantom Liberty expansion. But did you know that you can see him before setting foot in Dogtown? After meeting him at the basketball court, you drive off and he says this on the phone.
Why you calling me on my day off? Last I heard, you're the manager. Ask Bob, he owes me a favor anyway. Yeah, well, tough nuts. You'd have to manage without me. Boss man, I work the door at a club. Selection, bouncing.
With these dialogues, it's clear that he had an undercover role as a security agent at a club. And if we go to Dino Dinovic's club, which is located here, before starting Phantom Liberty, we can find our dear Solomon.
Try me.
Well, he doesn't seem very willing to talk to us, but at least it's cool to see him. Of course, you need to have purchased the expansion to see him happier in the bar, and I tried to see if we could encounter him again after starting Phantom Liberty or even after the events, but of course he was no longer there. At least we can still listen to his tracks, because yes, Solomon Reed, or rather in this case Idris Elba, recorded music for Phantom Liberty. The English actor is also a musician and a DJ known as DJ Big Driss. He released his work through his own label, Seven Wallace. For the expansion, he produced 3 tracks: Chokehold, Roller Coaster, and Walk of Shame. And it's that last track you hear when you step into the Heavy Hearts Club in Dogtown. So yeah, this man can do anything. The Metro system was introduced in Cyberpunk 2077 with update 2.1, adding a long-awaited feature in Night City. However, when I made my video about the location from the Edge Runner series, I noticed something. If we look at these images, the subway is identical to the one in the Edge Runner series. But since update 2.1, the subway on Walsin Street looks like this. I couldn't find any possible reason for this change. We could assume the subway was renovated, but it wasn't shown as under repair before. I don't know, let me know in the comments what's your theory for this one. And here's the location on the map if you want to take a trip like David. That wraps up today's video. Cyberpunk 2077 is filled with hidden gems, and I guarantee you there are more video plans to talk about this amazing world. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to see a video about every locations of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, here's one for you.